Princess Eleanor of Lindenfall had always believed that the grand palace she lived in was alive. Not alive the way people or creatures were, but alive in the soft, hidden way old memories lived inside the walls, between the creaking floorboards, and in the glow of lanterns that flickered even when the air was still. Her grandmother, Queen Beatrice, once told her, "Every stone here has heard 1,000 secrets. Child, if you listen gently," the palace whispers back. Tonight, Eleanor stood at her bedroom balcony, letting the cool silver light of the moon pour over her like water. Her room lined with carved walnut wood, old embroidered curtains, and a bed her great-grandmother Queen Mabel once slept in smelled faintly of lavender and old storybooks. Eleanor loved it more than the crown, more than the ballroom, more than anything that sparkled, because this room felt like a friend. But this night felt different. The palace was too quiet. No rustle from servants, no distant harp from the music hall, no late footsteps of the guards who usually whispered jokes to each other. The silence was so deep it felt like the entire kingdom was holding its breath. Eleanor pressed her hand against the stone railing, carved long ago by the castle mason Henry Whitlock, the man whose hands were once rumored to be so steady he could carve feathers from marble. Her grandmother spoke of him with warm fondness, recalling how he would whistle old American lullabies from his childhood as he worked lullabies from another world. Another time, carried by his ancestors from faraway shores. Tonight, Eleanor wished someone would whistle again, anything to break the strange stillness. Just then, a soft knock sounded at her door. She turned sharply. "Enter!" she called softly. The door creaked open, revealing Lady Clara Whip, her childhood nursemaid, now in her late 70s, but still standing, tall and bright-eyed. Her snow-white hair was tied in a tidy bun, and she carried her usual little lantern and old brass thing with tiny floral engravings. "Child," Clara said gently, "you shouldn't be awake this late. The moon is high, and your lessons begin at sunrise." "I couldn't sleep," Eleanor admitted. "Something feels strange tonight." Clara slowly stepped in, her lantern casting warm circles of gold on the walls. "Strange how?" Eleanor hesitated. "Do you hear anything?" Clara stopped walking. She tilted her head and listened. The silence wrapped around them like thick velvet. Clara's frown deepened. The palace is never this quiet, even in winter. There's the wind humming through the chimneys." Eleanor swallowed. "Exactly." Clara rested a gentle hand on Eleanor's arm. "Your grandmother used to say, 'Silence is never empty. It is a sign something wants to be heard.'" The words made a small shiver run down Eleanor's spine. "Do you think something is wrong?" she whispered. Clara didn't answer immediately. She moved toward the window, gazing out at the palace gardens to great willow trees, the silver pond, the ancient rose-covered arch made by Lord Theodore Hawthorne, a gardener whose hands were said to coax blossoms even from winter soil. The full moon washed everything in an otherworldly light. Clara inhaled deeply. "I've felt it to these past days." Then she added softly, "The last time the palace felt like this, something magical was afoot." Eleanor's heart thumped. "What happened?" Clara didn't answer. "Not yet." Instead, she said, "Come, sit." She guided Eleanor to the edge of the bed, sat beside her, and stroked her hair the way she had when Eleanor was a small girl afraid of thunder. "These walls," Clara whispered, tapping the bedpost, "remember things we've forgotten? And sometimes they try to speak when danger is near, or when destiny is close." Eleanor looked up sharply. "Destiny!" But before Clara could answer, a sudden gust of wind blew the balcony curtains into a wild flutter. Eleanor stood quickly. That was impossible. The night air was completely still moments ago. Clara rose as well, clutching the lantern tightly. The wind grew stronger, swirling only inside Eleanor's room, making the papers on her desk fly. A book on the shelf flipped open on its own. The curtains twisted like ribbons caught in an invisible dance. Eleanor stepped forward cautiously. "Clara?" Clara whispered. "It's happening again." "What is?" Before Clara could respond, the gust of wind tightened itself into a spiraling column of shimmering dust, soft, golden flecks that moved like tiny fireflies. Eleanor's breath caught. The golden dust formed into a faint outline, almost a person, not fully visible, but enough to see the curve of a shoulder, the impression of hands, the faint suggestion of a face. Eleanor's heart raced. A spirit? No, Clara breathed. A messenger! The glowing figure raised an arm. Its hand pointed toward Eleanor, then drifted toward her bedside table where an old box sat. The box was carved with delicate vines and roses, and Eleanor recognized it instantly. Her grandmother Beatrice's box. She had left it for Eleanor before she passed, saying, "Open it when the palace calls for you." Eleanor had never known what that meant. Now her blood thrummed with fear and curiosity. The glowing figure drifted closer to the box, then, slowly, faded, dissolving back into a swirl of gold dust before disappearing entirely. The room fell silent once more. The wind was gone. The air was still. Clara exhaled shakily. Your grandmother. She always knew this day would come. Eleanor whispered, What day? The day the palace wakes up for you. Eleanor's heartbeat quickened. She stepped toward the bedside table. The old box glowed softly, as if awakening for the first time in years. Clara's voice trembled with a mix of fear and awe. Eleanor, child, you must open it. Eleanor hesitated. What if something terrible lay inside? What if this was all some kind of warning? What if her grandmother had been trying to protect her? But deeper than fear was something else. Something warm and steady, a calling. She took a deep breath, slid her fingers over the engraved roses, and lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in velvet, lay an ancient silver key. Not a small key for jewelry or drawers. This was long, old, like something meant for a giant lock. Thin filigree swirled around its handle, forming the shape of a crescent moon, and beneath the key, a letter. The paper was yellowed at the edges, folded many times. Eleanor recognized the handwriting immediately, graceful loops and curls. Her grandmother's. She unfolded it with shaking hands. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, the palace has chosen you. There is a door beneath the castle that no one speaks of, a door older than the kingdom itself. This key belongs to you. Do not be afraid. Follow the echoes. They will guide you. Love. Grandmother Beatrice. Eleanor felt her breath leave her in a rush. A secret door. A hidden chamber. Why her? Clara steadied her. Your grandmother was the last to open that door. She was younger than you, brave like you, and chosen by the palace just as you are. Eleanor stared at her. What is behind the door? Clara's voice lowered. A truth the kingdom has forgotten. A magic older than the crown. Eleanor closed her fingers around the cold silver key, feeling its ancient weight. Something deep inside her stirred like a sleeping dream beginning to wake. She whispered, Then I must go. Clara nodded, tears shining in her old eyes. I knew you would say that. Princesses of the Whitmore line have never been afraid of the unknown. Eleanor stepped toward the door of her room. Clara raised her lantern and followed. The hidden chamber lies beneath the east wing. But the path is not easy. The palace may test you. Eleanor looked back at her room, the fluttering curtains now still, the moonlight painting soft silver on her floor, the echoes of her grandmother's words ringing in her heart. She whispered, I'm ready. And with the ancient key in her hand, Princess Eleanor stepped into the silent hallway, beginning the first steps of a destiny. Her grandmother had waited years for her to find. The palace of quiet echoes had finally awakened, and it had awakened for her. Asterisk. The palace corridors were never meant to feel frightening, yet as Princess Eleanor stepped into the dim hallway, lantern light flickering in Clara's trembling hand, she felt a prickling sensation rise along her arms. Shadows stretched long across the stone floor. Tapestries of old King's King, Walter the Bold, King Ramon the Gentle, and Queen Mabel the Wise watched from the walls with solemn eyes that seemed almost alive in the darkness. Clara walked just behind her. Despite her age, she moved with surprising steadiness, guided by some instinct that seemed older than the palace itself. Clara, Eleanor whispered, how long have you known about the door? Clara inhaled slowly. Since before you were born, child. Since long before your mother even came to this palace. Her voice went soft with memory. Queen Beatrice told me the secret when I was a young nursemaid. She said the palace would choose one girl of this bloodline every few generations. A girl with a heart pure enough to hear its whispers. And that's me. Eleanor's voice quivered. Clara placed her wrinkled hand gently on Eleanor's shoulder. It is not about power or skill. It's about kindness, Chal. You have always listened with your heart, even when the world was loud. That is why the palace chose you. They passed through the long marble gallery, where moonlight spilled across the floor through tall windows. Outside, the gardens glowed faintly silver, the fountains quiet, the willow trees still. The whole kingdom looked asleep. At the gallery's end stood the entrance to the east wing. Two gigantic wooden doors carved with the image of an old American eagle, an emblem brought centuries ago by the first settlers of Eleanor's bloodline, stood tall and unmoving. Clara touched the eagle carving. This wing was closed off before your grandfather was born. Eleanor frowned. Why? The magic beneath it, Clara whispered. Magic that runs deeper than time. It must sleep if the kingdom is to remain peaceful. Your grandmother believed the magic was meant only for moments of great need. The lantern light flickered. Eleanor tightened her grip on the silver key. Clara, do you think danger is coming? Clara didn't answer immediately. That silence said enough. Eleanor pushed the heavy doors open. They creaked loudly, echoing through the forgotten wing. Dust floated like faint glitter in the air. Inside, the east wing felt colder. The walls were bare, the floors lined with old cracked tiles. It smelled like ancient books and untouched air. Stay close, Clara murmured. The palace does strange things here. Paths shift. Staircases move. Eleanor blinked. Move. On their own. Clara nodded. Yes, when the palace is awake. It protects the hidden door. Just then, a low sound echoed like a groan of stone. Eleanor froze. The hallway ahead twisted ever so slightly, the walls seeming to breathe. The floor rippled like a reflection in water. Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible. It really is alive, the palace answered with a faint hum. Do not fear it, Clara said. It recognizes you. They walked deeper into the east wing, guided by Clara's lantern. As they turned a corner, Eleanor's eyes caught a strange painting. Dust lay thick on most of the walls, but this one painting looked untouched, almost glowing. It showed a young woman with long auburn hair, gentle brown eyes, and a silver key in her hand. Clara, Eleanor gasped. That's Queen Beatrice, Clara whispered. The last chosen one. Eleanor stepped closer. Her grandmother looked so young, so full of hope, standing beneath an arch of ancient stone. In the painting, she held the same silver key Eleanor now carried. Beneath the painting, faded letters read, She who listens may open what others fear. Eleanor swallowed hard. Clara? What did grandmother find when she opened the door? Clara hesitated, then answered in a voice just above a whisper. A truth so powerful, she never spoke a word of it again. A chill ran through Eleanor. Before she could ask more, a sudden rumbling sound echoed from the floor beneath them. The ground trembled slightly. Clara gripped Eleanor's arm. The palace is guiding us. The path is opening. Ahead, an archway revealed itself, an arch that had been invisible moments before. Old stone shifted and slid aside as if pushed by unseen hands. Eleanor stared in awe. How does it do that? The palace only reveals the path when the chosen one walks it, Clara said. They stepped beneath the arch, entering a narrow stone stairway spiraling downward. The walls were carved with symbols, American patterns from the earliest settlers who had somehow blended their heritage with the kingdom's. Magic. Each symbol glowed faintly as Eleanor passed. She whispered. They're responding to me. Clara nodded. Magic recognizes magic. The stairway seemed endless. Down and down they went, until Eleanor's legs ached and the lantern's flame dimmed. Finally, the stairs ended in a small landing, where a giant iron door stood waiting. It was massive twice, Eleanor's height, built from dark metal forged in old times. Its center held a strange lock shaped like a crescent moon. Eleanor's breath caught. This is it! Clara lifted the lantern higher. The light shimmered across names etched into the metal names of the past chosen ones. Eleanor stepped closer, reading them softly. Mabel Whitmore, Evelyn Hawthorne, Josephine Clark, Beatrice Whitmore. And then she saw space for one more name. Her name. Clara's voice trembled. Eleanor, are you ready? Eleanor held the key tightly. If grandmother trusted me with this, then yes. I am ready. She slid the key into the crescent moon lock. The metal glowed. Golden light radiated from the edges, spreading like sunbeams across the door. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Eleanor turned the key. A deep rumbling filled the chamber, echoing off the walls like ancient thunder. The iron door shivered, then slowly began to slide open. Eleanor shielded her eyes from the burst of golden light pouring out. When the light dimmed, she stepped forward. Behind the door lay a vast chamber far larger than she expected. Columns of white stone held up a dome painted with constellations. The air smelled like old paper, warm cedarwood, and faint magic. But what stole Eleanor's breath completely was the glowing pool at the chamber's center. The pool shimmered with swirling silver and gold, like moonlight melted into liquid. It cast dancing reflections across the room. Clara whispered, "The pool of echoes." Eleanor stared. "What is it?" Clara wiped her eyes. "It is the memory of the kingdom. Every truth, every secret, every forgotten story rests here." Eleanor stepped nearer, the silver water rippling slightly as if sensing her presence. "It feels alive," she whispered. Clara nodded. "The pool chooses what it shows. It reveals what the princess must know." Eleanor touched the water with her fingertips. At once, the chamber filled with swirling light. Eleanor gasped as images formed in the air, floating like misty visions. She saw an old king crowned with laurels, King Harold Whit, her great-grandfather standing over a battlefield of shadows. She saw Queen Beatrice younger than she had ever imagined, unlocking the hidden chamber and touching the same pool. She saw a dark force, rising like smoke from the mountains beyond the kingdom, a figure shrouded in black fog, with eyes like burning embers. Eleanor stepped back. "What is that?" The visions shifted again. She saw her kingdom Lindenfall, its towers trembling under approaching darkness. Clara grabbed her hand. "Eleanor, this is why the palace awakened. It senses the return of the Shadowborn." Eleanor felt her heart race. "Shadowborn?" Clara nodded grimly. "A sorcerer long banished by your ancestors. He vowed to return when the kingdom forgot the old magic." "And Eleanor?" Clara turned to Eleanor, toward the final vision. Girl stood in the center of the storm. It was Eleanor herself. She held a staff of light. Symbols swirled around her. The silver key had transformed into a shining crescent blade of magic. Eleanor's breath stopped. "That's me!" The vision faded. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the pool's soft glimmer. Clara squeezed her hand. "Your grandmother saw the same prophecy. She believed you would be the one to protect the kingdom when the shadow returned." Eleanor felt overwhelmed. Her heart pounded in her chest. "I'm not a hero, Clara. I can't fight a sorcerer. I barely understand magic." Clara cupped Eleanor's face gently. "Child, heroes are never born ready. They become ready because their kingdom needs them." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. Clara softened her voice. "Your grandmother wasn't ready either, but she grew into the strength the kingdom required. And so will you." Eleanor looked back at the glowing pool. Its silver surface rippled gently, like a heartbeat. "I don't know how," she whispered. The chamber answered with a faint hum. Then slowly a small object rose from the pool, floating on a swirl of silver light. Eleanor stepped closer. "What is that?" she murmured. Clara gasped softly. "The first gift!" The object floated into Eleanor's hands. A delicate pendant in the shape of a crescent moon, crafted from the same silver as the ancient key. At its center lay a tiny glowing stone. Eleanor held it tight. "It's warm," Clara whispered reverently. "It is the Moonstone of Wit, a charm passed only to the chosen princess. It will guide you to the truth and protect you from darkness." Eleanor stared at the pendant, feeling its magic pulse like a heartbeat in her palm. "Clara," she whispered, "I'm afraid Clara hugged her tightly despite her fragile frame. I know, child, but you have courage in your bones. Your grandmother believed in you, and so do I. Eleanor looked back at the pool's surface, now calm and glowing. What do I do next? She asked softly. Clara stepped beside her. The palace will guide you. Your journey begins tonight. The lantern light flickered. The chamber's echoes whispered softly, almost like voices calling her name. For a long moment, Eleanor simply stood there holding the Moonstone pendant, staring at the sacred pool, feeling the weight of destiny settle gently on her shoulders. Then she whispered the words that would shape her path. I will protect my kingdom, whatever it takes. The chamber responded with a soft, shimmering glow as if blessing her vow. Princess Eleanor turned back toward the stairway, the silver key and Moonstone pendant clasped in her hands. Her destiny had begun, and the kingdom of Lindenfall would soon need her more than it ever had before. Asterisk. The stairway back to the upper palace felt longer than before, as though the walls had stretched while Eleanor and Clara were inside the sacred chamber. Eleanor kept her hand curled around the Moonstone pendant, its warm pulse steadying her racing heart. Every few steps she would glance at it, half expecting the glow to fade, but it remained bright, soothing, protective, alive. Clara panted lightly behind her, but never once asked to rest. Slow down, child, she finally said with a small laugh. My bones aren't as quick as yours. Eleanor slowed, offering her arm, but Clara waved it off with her usual stubborn pride. I've climbed more staircases than you've danced balls in the Grand Hall. Save your strength. Eleanor smiled faintly. I don't feel strong. You don't need to feel strong to be strong, Clara said. Courage is quieter than people think. The lantern flickered as they ascended. The old symbols on the walls glowed faintly, following the pendant's warmth like moths drawn to a flame. When they finally reached the top of the stairs, Eleanor felt the palace shift slightly beneath her feet, just a soft tremor, like the deep breath of something ancient. Clara steadied herself against the wall. The palace is unsettled. It knows the darkness stirs. Eleanor squeezed the Moonstone. The Shadowborn? Do you think he's already near? Clara didn't answer, which said enough. They stepped back into the East Wing corridor, its shadows deeper and the air colder than before. Eleanor instinctively raised the pendant. Its silver glow pushed the darkness back a little, like it was potting a thick fog. Clara, Eleanor whispered, why would grandmother hide all of this from the kingdom? When the visions showed the Shadowborn before, why didn't she warn everyone? Clara sighed. Your grandmother was wise. She knew fear spreads faster than truth. The kingdom was peaceful then. Speaking of an ancient evil would have frightened people into making foolish choices. She believed the chosen princess when the time came would be the kingdom's light against the darkness. Eleanor looked down at the pendant in her palm. But why me? You have her heart, Clara whispered. That is enough! They continued walking through the empty wing, their footsteps echoing softly. But then something changed. The air grew colder, sharper. A faint whisper slithered through the hall, so quiet that Eleanor thought she imagined it at first. But then it came again, soft, curling like smoke. Eleanor? Eleanor froze. Her breath caught. Clara. Did you hear? Clara grabbed her arm. Stay close to me. The whisper brushed the back of Eleanor's neck like icy fingers. The key. Give me the key. Eleanor's heart thudded. Clara! Something is here? Clara lifted her lantern higher. No. It's not here. It's reaching. A low hum filled the hallway, and the walls began to darken, shadows creeping like ink, soaking into stone. Eleanor instinctively held the Moonstone forward. It flared, its warm glow expanding like a protective bubble. That was when the shape formed. A swirling plume of black mist, tall, almost human, materialized at the far end of the corridor. Its presence sucked the warmth from the air. Clara gasped softly. A wraith? Eleanor's voice trembled. A creature born from the Shadowborn's magic, Clara whispered. It senses the key. And you. The wraith drifted closer, its whispering voice like wind through dead leaves. Give me the key, Child of light. Eleanor stepped back, heart hammering. Clara? What do I do? Hold the Moonstone tight, Clara said, her voice shaking. The wraith stretched its long, shadowy arm toward them. Eleanor stumbled backward, but the Moonstone suddenly burned hot in her hand. And then a flash of pale silver light burst from the pendant, shooting forward in a narrow beam. The wraith recoiled with a screech that echoed through the entire wing. Its shadowy form twisted wildly. Eleanor gasped. It worked! But Clara's eyes widened. Child. Again? The wraith lunged toward them. Eleanor lifted the pendant, not knowing what to expect, just hoping. The Moonstone pulsed again. A second burst of light shot out wider, stronger than the first. It pushed the wraith back, pressing it against the far wall. The creature writhed, shrieking as cracks of glowing silver spread across its dark form. The light grew brighter, and with a final scream, the wraith dissolved into a cloud of black dust before vanishing entirely. Silence. Felled out. Clara collapsed to her knees with relief. Thank heavens! Eleanor? You did it! Eleanor stared at the pendant, trembling in her hand. Its glow softened, settling into a gentle pulse again. Her breath shook. I didn't know what I was doing. The pendant just reacted. Clara stood with difficulty. The Moonstone acts from your heart. It knows when to protect. You won't always need to understand. Sometimes? You need only trust. Eleanor nodded shakily. But then a soft voice echoed through the hallway. Not a whisper of darkness. A warm, gentle voice. Do not fear, child. The first test is passed. Eleanor turned sharply. Grandmother. Clara gasped and lowered her lantern. Before them, translucent and faintly glowing, stood Queen Beatrice's spirit, her form shimmering like moonlit mist. She looked older than in the painting, but peaceful, regal, kind. Eleanor's breath caught. Grandmother? Beatrice smiled softly. You have grown, my sweet Eleanor. I knew you would be the one. Clara bowed deeply. My queen! Beatrice raised a gentle hand. Clara, faithful heart, thank you for guiding her. Clara's eyes watered. Eleanor stepped forward. Grandmother, I don't understand. Why am I doing this alone? Why didn't you tell me when you were alive? Beatrice's expression soft with sorrow. Because the knowledge would have placed too heavy a burden on you as a child. Magic awakens only when the heart is ready. And yours only became ready tonight. Eleanor swallowed hard. But the Shadowborn, he's coming back, isn't he? Beatrice's expression darkened. Yes. His influence grows beyond the mountains. The wraith you faced was only a fragment. Soon he will return in full strength. The kingdom will need its true protector. Eleanor trembled. I'm not a warrior. I don't know magic. I don't even know what to do next. Beatrice stepped close, her ghostly hand hovering near Eleanor's cheek. Courage is not knowing how to fight. Courage is choosing to stand even when you cannot see the path. Eleanor felt tears brim in her eyes. Beatrice continued. The Moonstone awakened because your heart awakened. It will guide you to the 4 sacred artifacts needed to defeat the Clara's eyes widened. Artifacts? The old prophecies were real then. Beatrice nodded. Yes! Artifacts forged when light and shadow first fought. Without all 4, no magic can seal the Shadowborn away again. Eleanor felt a deep pull inside her chest. Where are they? Beatrice's form flickered slightly. Far? Hidden beyond the kingdom. Each artifact requires proving your heart, and each will test a different part of your soul. Eleanor whispered. My soul. Beatrice's gentle expression grew solemn. The Shadowborn does not fear swords. He fears purity, truth, compassion, sacrifice, and wisdom. These are the forces that weaken him. The corridor dimmed as Beatrice's form flickered again. Grandmother, ere no akuraido. I cannot stay long, Beatrice whispered. The darkness grows stronger. But remember this? Her voice softened into something warm and ancient. Your heart is your greatest weapon, Eleanor, and the palace will be your guide. Light shimmered around her form like dissolving moon rays. Seek the first artifact in the Valley of Ashen Willows. Listen to the Moonstone. Trust Clara, and trust yourself. Eleanor reached for her desperately. Grandmother, please don't leave me. Beatrice whispered one last soft phrase. The kingdom believes in you. And then her form vanished like mist in sunlight. Eleanor stood in silence, tears rolling down her cheeks. Clara rested a steadying hand on her shoulder. Oh, child, she whispered, her eyes shining with grief and pride. She is with you still, in every breath, in every light. Eleanor closed her eyes, clinging to Clara's voice. Then she inhaled deeply. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but behind it was a quiet determination, a new strength. We leave at dawn, Eleanor said softly. Clara blinked. Leave? For the Valley of Ashen Willows? Yes. Eleanor held the Moonstone close to her chest. If the kingdom is in danger, I must find the artifact. I must do what grandmother could not finish. Clara nodded, her voice soft. Then I shall pack provisions and fetch someone who can accompany us. Eleanor looked at her. Huh? Clara gave a small smile. An old friend of your grandmother? A man named Sir Theodore Hawthorne, a retired knight loyal, wise, and stubborn as an oak tree. Eleanor smiled faintly. I would be grateful for his help. Clara bowed her head. Then, tonight, you must rest. Tomorrow, your journey begins. Eleanor looked down the long corridor, still dim, still echoing with the last whisper of her grandmother's voice. She whispered softly, I won't fail you. The Moonstone glowed warmly in her palm, as if answering her promise. Princess Eleanor turned away from the shadows and walked back into the waking palace, ready finally for destiny's path to open before her. Princess Eleanor awoke earlier than usual, long before the first pale threads of dawn stretched across the sky. Her dreams had been soft and strange, full of whispering winds, flickering lights, and something that felt like a gentle call from far away. For a moment, she simply lay still, listening to the faint rhythm of the castle breathing around her. The royal palace of Elderfall, with its high stone towers and endless velvet drapes, had always been her home. But that morning, as she stood by her window, Eleanor felt something new inside, a run ache, an anticipation, as though the world itself was waiting for her to take her next step. Down in the courtyard, she saw Sir Theodore, the calm, silver-haired knight who had served her family since her grandfather's time, tightening the straps on his saddle, and next to him stood Lady Mabel, her grandmother's oldest friend and keeper of old legends. She held a book pressed to her chest, old pages fluttering slightly in the breeze. Eleanor smiled. Everyone she trusted most was already awake. That meant the day ahead was no ordinary day. She dressed quietly along, midnight blue cloak embroidered with tiny gold threads, a gift from Queen Beatrice. The cloak shimmered gently, as though night sky dust had been sewn into its fabric. Her mother always said, some journeys require the comfort of stars. And today, they were traveling to Silent Valley, a place where, according to the kingdom's oldest tales, the air itself listened, and the lanterns of forgotten souls glowed in the night like floating memories. The moment Eleanor stepped into the courtyard, Lady Mabel greeted her with a warm smile. You slept little, Mabel said softly, studying her eyes. I dreamed of lights, Eleanor whispered. Mabel nodded. Then the valley has begun calling you. Sir Theodore mounted his horse and looked down at her with the gentle sternness of a grandfather. We ride as soon as you're ready. Princess? I'm ready now, Eleanor said. And she was. Their journey carried them first through Elderfall Woods, where the trees grew so tall their branches braided together overhead. Strands of sunlight slipped through the leaves, creating rivers of gold across their path. Eleanor rode beside Theodore, her horse stepping softly over the dew-drenched earth. What exactly is Silent Valley? She asked after a long silence. Theodore inhaled deeply before answering. A place older than the kingdom itself, Mabel, riding just behind them, added softly. It is a place where magic settles when the world becomes too noisy. Eleanor turned in her saddle to look at her. Magic settles. Mabel nodded. Magic yes. Enutiraudo Eleanor. It doesn't shout. It hides in quiet places, in forgotten paths, in bits of courage people don't know they carry. The valley holds pieces of that magic, old memories, old hopes, waiting for someone who can hear them. Eleanor shivered, though the air was warm. Why would it call me? Theodore glanced at her from the corner of his eye. Because you are the first princess in centuries who dreams with her heart still open. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. She did not feel special. Just curious. But the forest seemed to disagree. Birds fluttered beside her as if guiding her. A soft breeze tangled playfully with her hair. Even the trees seemed to lean inward as she passed, like they recognized her. Eleanor's world had always been full of royal duties, delicate manners, and carefully measured words. But out here, she felt like something inside her was loosening, stretching wings she never knew she had. As the sun dipped low, they reached a ridge overlooking a wide bowl of land. It was an enormous valley, silent, indeed but breathtaking. Mist rolled across it like silver silk. Ancient stones ringed the edges like guardians, and floating above the grass were faint, glowing lanterns, hundreds of them soft, warm, breathing with light. Irino Agaspito, what are they? She whispered. Mabel's voice soft with awe. Memories. Theodore nodded. Every lantern belongs to a soul who once lived in elder. Healers, wanderers, children who dreamed too brightly, elders who kept the kingdom safe through long winters. Their memories remain, lighting this valley so the world never forgets who built it. Eleanor felt her eyes sting with emotion. What do we do here? She murmured. We listen, Mabel replied. And we let the valley show you what you are meant to see. They walked down into the valley, on foot. The air grew cooler, sweeter, almost musical. Eleanor felt her heart beating slower, calmer, as though the valley itself was whispering a lullaby. A lantern drifted toward her, its glow, a soft honey. She reached out instinctively. Careful, Theodore warned, but gently. It won't harm her, Mabel said. The lantern floated just above Eleanor's palm, and then, like a ripple of warmth, a memory washed over her. She saw a boy with bright eyes running through the castle halls, laughing as a young Queen Beatrice chased him playfully. She heard the deep chuckle of the king as he watched them, pride shining in his eyes. And then she realized, "This is my father," she whispered. The lantern pulsed, as though agreeing. A tear spilled down her cheek. She had never seen her father so young, so alive with joy. He had passed away when she was only a child, leaving behind a silence that even the castle walls could feel. The lantern hovered closer, as if giving her a warm embrace. That memory has been waiting for you, Mabel said softly. Lanterns choose their viewers. Eleanor's chest ached with longing, but also with comfort. The lantern drifted away, returning to its gentle glow above the valley. Dotalono wiped her eyes. Ah? There. More memories of him. There might be, Theodore said. But the valley does not show everything at once. It gives only what your heart can carry today. Eleanor nodded slowly. She understood. As twilight deepened, the lantern's glow strengthened. Mist curled around their feet like a friendly ghost. Eleanor suddenly paused. Did you hear that? She whispered. Mabel and Theodore stopped. A soft hum drifted through the valley low, melodic, almost like someone humming an old lullaby. Eleanor followed the sound, drawn to it as though a thread of silk wrapped around her heart. At the valley's center stood a broken stone archway, covered in vines. Beneath it, a single lantern glowed brighter than all the others, pure white, trembling with energy. And the humming came from within it. Eleanor stepped closer, her breath caught. Inside the lantern, like a tiny moving picture made of light, she saw her grandmother, Dot Hazel, the grandmother she remembered only in bits of stories and fading childhood memories. She was young here, standing in the palace garden, singing to a little girl, Eleanor's mother, Queen Beatrice, no more than 3 years old. Eleanor pressed a hand to her mouth. Grandmother. The lantern flickered as though recognizing her presence. Mabel exhaled shakily. Hazel was the valley's guardian before I was, she whispered. She always told me the valley would one day call one of her blood. Eleanor stepped closer. kneeling before the lantern. Her grandmother's voice soft, warm, full of love wrapped around her like a blanket. For a long time, Eleanor didn't speak. She just listened. Listened to a lullaby she never knew her grandmother had sung. Listened to memories that felt like home. Listened to a love that time had tried, but failed to erase. When the lantern finally dimmed, Eleanor kissed her fingertips and touched its warm surface. "Thank you," she whispered. Asterisk as they prepared to leave, the lanterns began drifting together, forming a swirling pattern above the valley. The lights drew shapes, symbols, then lines that wove into a glowing crest, a royal crest. The crest of Eldefall. Theodore stared upward, stunned. "That hasn't happened in my lifetime," he murmured. Mabel bowed her head, recognizing the omen. "The valley is choosing her," she whispered. "Choosing me?" Eleanor breathed. "To guide the kingdom," Theodore said softly, "in ways no ruler has before." Eleanor's heart pounded not with fear, but with a strange, quiet strength. The lantern's glow reflected in her eyes like stars finding their home. For the first time, Eleanor sensed her true path beginning to unfold. A path whispered by memories, guided by love, lit by ancient lanterns, and chosen by the valley itself. The next morning arrived softly, with pale lavender light blooming over the mountains of Elderfall. The castle seemed unusually still, as if it sensed that Princess Eleanor had returned from a place the world rarely touched. She stood on her balcony wrapped in a wool shawl, thinking not of the valley's glowing lanterns, but of the crests that had formed above her, floating, shimmering, choosing her. Even now she could feel the valley's warmth inside her chest, like a tiny lantern of her own had settled beneath her ribs. Below, in the courtyard, Sir Theodore stood with his arms folded behind his back. He wasn't barking orders or pacing like he normally did. Instead, he stared up at the mountains, his expression calm but heavy with thought. Lady Mabel sat on a stone bench near the fountain, her eyes following the steam rising from her teacup. Something quiet and important lingered in the air around them all. Eleanor took a deep breath, and as she was turning to enter her room, she heard a soft knock. "Come in," she said. The door opened slowly, revealing Queen Beatrice, wearing a gown the color of pale gold morning. Her mother's face looked tired, beautiful as always, but touched with a kind of worry that had nothing to do with royal burdens. When the queen walked toward her, Eleanor noticed the faint tremble in her hands. "You saw memories of your grandmother," Beatrice said gently. Eleanor nodded. "I saw her singing to you." The queen's eyes softened, and a tear threatened to fall before she caught it. "She used to sing that lullaby every night. I haven't heard it since I was a child." "Not the way she sang it." Eleanor touched her mother's hand. "The valley showed it to me." Beatrice closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in her daughter's words. "Your grandmother and I used to speak of the valley often. She believed one day someone in the bloodline would be able to hear it clearly. Not just see the lanterns, but understand their message. I don't know if I understand anything yet." "Ere no ahoy speruto. You understand more than you think," Beatrice murmured, brushing a lock of hair behind Eleanor's ear. "And the valley wouldn't have chosen you without reason." Eleanor's heart swelled with both fear and pride. Beatrice motioned for her to follow. "There is something I want to show you." They walked together through the castle's long north corridor, the one lined with portraits of kings and queens of Raymond. The gentle, Margaret the wise, Arthur the watchful, Lillian the bright. Eleanor always felt small here. The hallway smelled like cedar and old polish, and the eyes of past rulers seemed to follow her. Today, however, she felt less intimidated and more connected, as though each portrait whispered its silent approval. At the end of the hall was a tall iron door Eleanor had seen hundreds of times but never opened. The queen produced a key from her necklace and turned it slowly in the lock. The hinges creaked softly and, respectful, and the door opened to reveal a circular room lit only by a skylight. Dust motes drifted in the beams of sunlight. In the center stood a pedestal carved from marble, and on top of it lay a crown. A crown Eleanor had never seen before. It was silver, not shiny or new, but aged, soft, almost glowing. Its edges curled like wind patterns. 10 small gems lined its surface, each a different shade of stormy sky. Pale gray, deep blue, soft violet. The crown of quiet storms, the queen said, her voice almost a whisper. Eleanor stepped closer. It's beautiful. It belonged to your grandmother, Beatrice said with a trembling smile. But she wore it only once, the day the valley last called a member of our family. After that day, she warned us never to use its power carelessly. Eleanor froze. Power? Beatrice nodded. This crown awakens magic knots, loud, destructive, magic, but the kind that listens to hearts, the kind that heals, the kind that binds the kingdom in peace. Eleanor swallowed hard. What happened the last time it was worn? The queen hesitated. Your grandmother stopped a war before it began, with nothing but her presence and the crown's quiet storm. Eleanor felt her pulse thrum in her ears. Long ago, Beatrice confirmed. Before you were born. Before even I was crowned. Eleanor stared at the crown as a soft breeze stirred the dust in the air. For a moment, she could almost imagine Hazel standing in this very room, wise, brave, wearing the crown as clouds swirled around her shoulders. Beatrice rested a hand on Eleanor's back. The valley calling you, and this crown reacting since your return. It means something is coming, Eleanor shivered. What? What kind of something? A change, her mother murmured. Not necessarily danger, but something that will require a heart strong enough to listen. Lady Mabel and Sir Theodore were waiting outside the Hall of Old Crowns when the Queen and Eleanor stepped out. Theodore studied Eleanor's face carefully. You saw it? Yes, Eleanor replied softly. The crown has stirred, Mabel said, her voice trembling with awe. I felt it from the courtyard. Hazel must be smiling. Eleanor's mind raced. She didn't feel ready. She wasn't even sure she deserved such a role. But as she stood there, surrounded by the three people who had guided her entire life, something inside her shifted. Not confidence, not certainty, but readiness. A quiet readiness, like the valley's lanterns had settled into her bones. Suddenly a cold wind swept down from the north. Not harsh, but unusual. The courtyard flags fluttered violently for a moment before settling again. Theodore frowned. A storm? In the middle of spring, Mabel whispered. Queen Beatrice turned toward Eleanor. The valley's magic always precedes a shift. A storm is often its messenger. Eleanor hugged her arms against herself, feeling both cold and warm at once. And then the sound came. A distant rumble, not thunder, not a growl, but something like a giant exhaling. The air thickened. The leaves on the castle trees trembled, and the sky above Elderfall began to swirl in slow, deliberate circles as though someone was stirring clouds with careful hands. Theodore stepped forward instinctively. Your Majesty, we must take shelter. But Beatrice shook her head firmly. No, this storm is not meant to harm us. Eleanor felt drawn to the center of the courtyard. She walked slowly, her cloak trailing behind her. The clouds overhead formed a spiral, and from within it, a beam of soft silver light descended, landing right at Eleanor's feet. Mabel gasped. The valley is sending a sign. Eleanor felt her breath catch. Inside the column of light, tiny glowing motes began to appear, turning slowly, forming shapes. A lantern! A familiar lantern! Eleanor's heart seized. It's the same one. The one that held grandmother's memory. The lantern hovered in front of her, glowing brighter than ever before. Eleanor reached out, trembling, and this time, when she touched it, she did not see a memory. She saw a message. A place. A calling. A path. A river in the east. A bridge of stone. A shadow approaching the kingdom. Not evil but lost. Something searching for balance. The lantern pulsed with a final burst of light. Before disappearing into the air, Eleanor staggered backward, overwhelmed. What did it show you? Beatrice asked. Eleanor swallowed, tears rising in her eyes, not of fear, but of awakening. It told me, she whispered, that the kingdom needs me to go east, to the River of Whispers. Someone is coming. Someone who needs help before they bring harm without meaning to. Mabel pressed a hand to her heart. The valley has chosen her path. Theodore bowed his head. Beatrice cupped Eleanor's face gently. You won't go alone. Eleanor nodded. I know, because she felt it now, her grandmother's courage, her father's laughter, her mother's strength, the valley's lantern light, the crown's quiet storm all resting inside. Her! Waiting, stirring, calling her forward. The journey to the River of Whispers had begun. The following morning. Elderfall Castle buzzed with a quiet urgency. Nothing frantic, nothing loud gust, a subtle shift. A tightening of the air, as though the walls themselves had overheard the lantern's message and were holding their breath. Princess, Eleanor rose before dawn once more. She dressed in travel garments instead of royal gowns, a soft, storm-gray cloak with silver thread, tall boots, and a leather satchel for whatever the River of Whispers might bring. When she glanced at her reflection, she noticed something new in her eyes. A calm courage, a quiet storm of her own, sir. Theodore waited at the gates, his armor polished but not to a shine. He had chosen his older set, the one he trusted more in uncertain lands. Lady Mabel had her spellbook strapped to her side, though she rarely needed to open it. She always said magic liked her better when she left it alone. Queen Beatrice stood at the front, hands clasped tightly. She did not wear a crown today, only a simple silver band, the same she once wore as a young princess. When Eleanor approached, Beatrice touched her cheek lovingly. Remember, she said softly, not all things that come to the kingdom are threats. Some are simply lost. Eleanor nodded. The lantern showed me that. Mabel stepped closer. The River of Whispers lies farther east than any kingdom road. We will need to pass through the forest of still branches. It is not dangerous, unless we bring fear into it. Theodore cleared his throat gruffly, which we won't. As always, he was steady as an oak tree. Beatrice kissed Eleanor's forehead. I trust you more than you know. Eleanor held her tightly for a moment, breathing in her mother's scent-warm linen, faint jasmine, the familiar comfort of home. That then, with her heart steady and her purpose set, Eleanor mounted her horse. The gates opened. The journey to the river began. The forest of still branches was unlike Elderfall Woods, where Elderfall was alive with birdsong and dancing leaves. Still Branches was unervingly calm. The trees stood tall and unmoving, their branches stiff as though frozen in time. Even the air barely stirred. Eleanor could hear her own heartbeat too clearly. Why is it so quiet? She whispered. Because the forest listens, Mabel replied, and it listens only to truth. Sir Theodore rode slightly ahead, his hand resting near the hilt of his sword, not out of fear, but out of habit. The trees respond to honesty, Eleanor asked, fascinated. Mabel nodded. If you lie, even in thought, the forest changes. It can twist paths, con su direction, but if your heart is steady, it will guide you. Eleanor swallowed. She had nothing to hide, but the pressure still felt heavy. As they moved deeper, Eleanor noticed something unusual. Their horses' hooves made no sound. Leaves did not crunch. Even breathing seemed muffled. It felt like walking inside someone's dream. Then, as they rounded a bend in the path, Eleanor saw a tree unlike the others. Old, massive, with a trunk split down the middle as though struck by ancient lightning. What is that? She whispered. Mabel inhaled deeply. The listening tree? We have reached the heart of the forest. Theodore dismounted first. We proceed on foot. As they stepped forward, Eleanor felt a strange sensation, like someone was gently brushing through her thoughts. Not invading, just reading. The listening tree's hollow center glowed faintly, and a soft hum pulsed around them. Mabel bowed her head. You may speak. Speak to the tree, Eleanor asked unsurely. It hears you, Mabel said, and it will decide if you may pass. Eleanor took a steadying breath and approached. The tree's interior light brightened, warm and soft like a lantern dot. Eleanor placed her hand on its bark. I am Eleanor of Elderfall, she whispered, granddaughter of Hazel, daughter of Beatrice, called by the valley. I I seek the River of Whispers to help something lost find its way. The tree's humming deepened. For a moment, nothing else happened. Then the split in the trunk shimmered with silver light, widening to reveal a clear path ahead. The forest had accepted them. Theodore released a breath he'd been holding. Good! Trees like you, Mabel chuckled softly. The listening tree doesn't like anyone. It respects them. Eleanor smiled. She felt lighter. They continued their journey, and as they walked, the forest slowly, softly began to move. Branches swayed gently. Birds dared to chirp again. It was as though the forest had finally exhaled. By midday. Sunlight returned in warm golden streams, and by late afternoon, they emerged onto a grassy ridge overlooking a shimmering blue ribbon that wound across the land like liquid crystal. Eleanor gasped. The River of Whispers. The river was unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen. It did not rush or roar. Instead, it flowed smoothly, as though gliding over invisible silk. And the water itself, whispered not voices, not words, but something between them. Soft threads of sound, like memories being carried by water. Theodore knelt and touched the surface, his brows furrowed. Mabel, it's stronger than the last time I came here. Mabel nodded gravely. The river is reacting? Someone is drawing near. Eleanor approached the riverbank. When she crouched beside the water, the whispers grew louder, clearer. The river seemed to reach toward her, curling like a slow ribbon, glowing faintly at its edge. Eleanor dipped her fingers into the water. 1,000 soft murmurs brushed her mind, childlike, innocent. Confused, lost. Someone is lost. Someone is coming. Someone needs you. Eleanor gasped softly and looked up at Theodore and Mabel. It's speaking to me. It's trying to show me something. Mabel gestured gently. Let it. Eleanor closed her eyes. The whispers gathered, swirling around her hand, weaving into a faint image. A tall figure cloaked in shadows, walking toward the kingdom. Not evil, not violent, but broken. Conflicted. Searching. And behind him, towering at the horizon, Eleanor saw storm clouds, not like the gentle swirling clouds from the crown's light. These were heavier, trembling with unrest. The lantern's message rang through her mind once more. Someone is coming. Someone who needs help before they bring harm without meaning to. Eleanor's heart tightened. She looked up. We have to find him before he reaches the kingdom. Theodore straightened. Whoever he is, we must be prepared. But Eleanor shook her head. No, we must be kind. Mabel smiled softly. Your grandmother would say those exact words. Eleanor stood slowly, river water dripping from her fingers. Suddenly, the wind shifted.
The whispers turned sharper for a single moment. Urgent warning.
Like 100 lanterns flickering at once, and then from the far side of the river, a branch snapped loudly. Eleanor froze. Theodore reached for his sword. Mabel lifted her spellbook, and from the trees emerged a figure tall, wrapped in tattered dark fabric, head lowered, steps unsteady. A stranger. The air pulsed with magic and tension. Eleanor's breath caught, not in fear, but in recognition. The river's whispers rose all around them. He was the one. The lost one, the reason she had been called as the stranger, stepped into the fading light of day. Eleanor felt her heart beat with a strange, quiet certainty. Her journey was no longer about reaching the river. It was about changing the fate of the kingdom and the heart of the stranger, now standing before her. The sun was low in the sky, painting the River of Whispers in streaks of molten gold and violet. Princess Eleanor stood at the riverbank, her cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The Moonstone pendant glimmered softly at her chest, pulsing like a heartbeat, echoing the rhythm of the river itself. Before her, the stranger emerged fully from the trees, a tall figure cloaked in darkness, yet his eyes carried something that tugged at her heart. Not malice, not hatred, but confusion, pain, and loneliness. Sir Theodore stepped forward, hand on his sword. Lady Mabel opened her spellbook with caution, preparing to defend the princess. Eleanor raised her hand gently. "Wait," she said, her voice calm but firm. The stranger froze. His shadowy cloak shifted in the breeze, revealing glimpses of pale skin and silver streaks in dark hair. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, swirling with uncertainty. I didn't mean," he began, voice trembling. "You're lost," Eleanor said softly, stepping closer. "The river shows me that. You've wandered far from the path. Not out of hate, but out of confusion." The stranger blinked. "How? How do you know?" "The river whispers," Eleanor said. She held up the Moonstone. Its glow spread gently around them, brushing the shadows back, softening the tense air. "And I listen." The stranger took a hesitant step closer. His hands shook, and for a moment Eleanor saw him not as an enemy, but as someone small and frightened. I was told to bring ruin," he said, voice barely audible. "I was told the kingdom must fall." "But someone told you wrong," Eleanor replied, her voice steady. "You were never meant to destroy. The Shadowborn wanted to twist you, to make you think harming others was your choice. But your heart is not dark." The stranger's eyes filled with tears. I don't know who I am anymore." Eleanor reached forward, keeping her voice gentle. "Then let me help you find out. The Moonstone and the Valley called me here for this reason. You are not the Shadowborn. You are someone who needs guidance, someone who can be saved." A shiver ran through him, the tension of years of confusion unraveling. The shadows around him softened, coiling down into the earth, as if the river itself had breathed life back into him. Sir Theodore lowered his sword slowly. Mabel's hands relaxed over her spell. Even the air felt lighter, filled with quiet anticipation. The stranger stepped fully into the moonlight. He looked at Eleanor with a fragile hope. I want to believe you," he said. Eleanor smiled softly. "Then start by listening to your own heart. The kingdom will help you remember who you are." The river stirred, sending ripples across the surface, carrying glowing motes of light that danced like lanterns. Eleanor felt the warmth of her grandmother's love and the courage of the crown's quiet storm surround her. She held out her hand to the stranger. "Walk with us. The valley and the river will guide you, and so will I." For a long moment, he hesitated. Then, slowly, he placed his hand in hers. A spark of warmth traveled through Eleanor's arm, and the Moonstone blazed softly, sealing the bond between their hearts. Mabel whispered, "The first act of true compassion. It begins to undo the Shadowborn's power." Sir Theodore nodded, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. "It's working! The darkness can't survive kindness." Together, they followed the river downstream. The stranger's steps grew steadier with each passing moment, and the shadows that clung to him like chains began to lift. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eleanor felt a profound sense of peace. The kingdom was not yet safe. Challenges still awaited, but the path had been illuminated. She had listened. She had acted with compassion. And, for the first time, the Shadowburn's hold over the world felt fragile. The river whispered its quiet songs. The Moonstone pulsed gently, and the valley's lanterns above them glowed faintly in the distance. Eleanor realized then that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. The kingdom would face storms, yes, but it would also know light. The stranger turned to Eleanor, his eyes now clear. "Thank you," he said softly. Eleanor smiled, her heart full. "No, thank you for choosing to trust your heart." As night fell over the River of Whispers, lanterns drifted into the sky like stars come to earth. The journey was far from over, but Princess Eleanor had learned the most important lesson of all, that love, kindness, and courage could restore even the most lost soul. The kingdom of Elderfall had been given hope once again, and Princess Eleanor chosen by the valley, guided by her grandmother's wisdom, and armed with the Moonstone and her quiet storm of courage, was ready for whatever would come next. The night settled softly over the river. The lanterns glowed brighter than ever, and the world, for the first time in many years, felt at peace.